write about. Trying to figure out what it's all about. Existentialist. Am I worth anything or just discount? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
That was the great sounds of Watson with Outside on WNHH-LP 103.5 FM New Haven. Myself, Prestige, with my partner in crime, Long Island Rage, Elm City Maze. EZ BlueZ is in the building. EZ BlueZ, you're better with introductions more than me. Who do we have with us today on Behind the Brand?
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk for a moment. We're going to pontificate a little bit on the importance of pairs. What is Batman without a Robin? What is me without Prestige? What is Simon without Garfunkel? No one would ever truly know. But in those rare moments where you find that perfect pair and melodically you can create harmonies that surpass what was once written, it is a beautiful thing. Today, we are blessed to have one of the best pairs in CT, a group that actually goes out and not only puts on a heck of a show, puts together a heck of a show, but also makes sure that they allow other people to participate in it. And we all know my statement is we can only rise together. So these guys are directly in that. So we are honored and blessed. I want you to put your hands together, not if you're driving, keep your hands at 10 and 2. We don't want any accidents. I mean, it is terrestrial radio, right? But mentally, put your hands together for the amazing Gabi and Whitney. And just so everyone knows, they go so far back with Behind the Brand. They were actually one of the acts that was part of our Unified Noise Fest back in the before times. So put your hands together for Gabi and Whitney. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. And we can't wait to kind of dive into what's going on in the Connecticut music scene these days and how everyone can work together and help each other out.
Absolutely.
Exactly. But before we get there, before we talk about the end goal, let's talk about the startups. Let's talk about what both of you were like, hey, because again, we talk about this all the time. Music is one of the hardest things in the world to break through. It is heartbreaking. It can be gut-wrenching. But through all of that, and then on top of that, add in, unfortunately, it's also a male chauvinistic driven industry. So being two females in it is even harder. So after all of the negative, what brings you guys to be like, hey, this is who I am, and this is who I'm going to represent as?
Sure. I think the best way to kind of explain it is to explain like our musical background and then how we came together. Yeah. So for me, I started at a very young age. I actually ended up taking voice lessons with a father of a very famous, and I probably shouldn't say the name, conductor. So I studied classically. So my background is actually in classical Italian art songs. And from there, I went to a little bit of musical theater, but I'm really a rocker at heart. So, of course, I went through all the trials and tribulations of having to practice all the time, being a part of multiple groups at the same time. And eventually I made my way to California and went to school as a music major out there. So my interest has really always been, like I said, in rock, specifically punk. So I ended up doing a double major in music and political science because I wanted to really understand what everyone was so peeved about, right? I wanted to understand why people were writing music that was angry and that was driven for change as opposed to stagnancy. I think that's actually probably one of the hardest genres to really write for, because you're not only expressing why you're upset, but it's solution driven, as opposed, not saying it's a bad thing, but it's very different from, say, writing a love song, which is, a place of this is how I am and this is what it is, as opposed to where am I going to take this next. So after I was in California for a bit, I ended up coming back here. I'm the oldest of 7. So I have a lot of responsibilities to home and to family. So I ended up back here. And after a couple years of being here, I was introduced to Gabi. So you want to give your background a little bit? Talk about how we came together.
Yeah, so I've always loved entertaining, and I got into music. I've always loved music. I started playing guitar when I was almost a teenager. I played throughout college at different events. I did take lessons, and when I was in college, I actually did an AmeriCorps program with our friend Liz, and that's how I met Whitney. We stayed in touch, and then I met Whitney through Liz, and we're all musicians. And, you know, about 6 years ago, because now we're 6 years together, our anniversary just passed.
Yeah, literally this week, our 6-year anniversary happened. So,
yeah, we had our first performance together. It used to be Smitty's of Black Rock. And we
that was
the open mic. It was so much fun.
That was the OG, and we have so much love for Smitty. I mean,
Love you,
he's
Smitty.
doing his thing, I believe, in Newtown now, and we see him every now and again. But, you know, for people who've been in the scene, especially in Fairfield County for a long time, he's definitely a large part of it.
Yeah.
You know, when he had McCoy's and, you know, all the other places that he was involved with. So big up Smitty. He's our guy.
Yes.
We love him. He's the best. But in terms of how we came together, as you noted before, we are both female.
Yeah.
And it's very commonplace to have a female singer and a male backing band. But we really wanted to take it in a different direction and sort of tell the story from a female perspective. A lot of discourse has been taking place, especially with the Me Too movement sort of coming out, about how women are often not only marginalized, but men tend to, in certain positions of power, take advantage and create a scenario where all you can do is what they want you to do in order to get from point A to point B. And we've done really everything we can to, instead of falling into that trap, building relationships with people that we know we can trust, people who share the same values, the same ethics, the same sort of worldview on where things are and where they need to be. Because the fact of the matter is, whether we're talking about racial discrimination, political marginalization, all sorts of atrocities internationally, you know, religious differences that are not always valued. We're really coming from a place of, okay, with all of these different socio-political aspects at play, we're never at a place where we can really say, okay, we can take a breath. We're good now. We don't have to do any more work. There is always more work. And I do have to say, on a personal note, I have a lot of friends who are also in the LGBTQ community. One of my best friends is transgendered. So I've seen a lot of, even within the communities, that these that really should be coming together around the same causes. There's also discrimination in there. Mm-hmm. So my goal ultimately with music, since music is a healing tool, to find a way to allow people to see the commonality and to take it to a place beyond that. Okay, I see it. So now what do I do with it? How do I make it better? How can we come together, understand each other, and celebrate instead of tolerating? Celebration over toleration is really my end goal. Absolutely. Because a lot of people out there say, oh, well, you know, I can handle this. I can be around this. That's not celebrating, right? That's toleration. There's a big distinction. So let's get us to a place where we can understand each other and make something better than what currently exists. Yeah.
That is absolutely awesome. I love, first of all, thank you for being as open as humanly possible, because these are not, we try really hard to to give the voice for everyone, and we are not afraid to have uncomfortable conversations. We do feel that uncomfortable conversations are the only way that we can all grow together. So I want to thank you, give you your flowers for taking that step. And it's true. I mean, we talk about it on the show all the time. I've been honored and blessed to be able to walk in many different worlds and to sit at many people different tables. But I also know that that's not for everyone, and I know that that's not allowed to be for everyone. So that when I have the opportunity to give a voice for somebody else, I'm going to give that voice. And sometimes it's with my mouth, sometimes it's with the show, and sometimes it's in basis that could probably have gotten me arrested. We'll talk about that in a different time and place.
I'm so on your wavelength. I can't even be there. I'm here for it. 110.
Exactly. So first and foremost, again, thank you so much for that. I love the fact that you really jumped into the punk aspect and how it all really does correlate, because really that has always been a scene, as much as people can take a look at it and it seems to come out of a place of anger. It really is a scene of healing.
Yes.
Although there's always a bunch of bad apples that can spoil a bunch and different things like that. I'm not, in no way am I not saying that there aren't also harmful things that happen throughout that type of scene as well. Right. But I will say that it is a place where I've always felt there is, how do I put this? The island of the misfit toys, all the misfit toys kind of got along, if that makes sense. And punk seems to be where the misfit toys like to land.
Absolutely.
You know, so I'm a big fan of that. I am definitely a big fan of that. When you guys sit and you do the writing aspects, when paying tribute to the punk aspect, but also being able to cultivate some of the stuff in the pop field, because your vocal ranges are amazing and how they blend together, fans. But also you have a good style to cross and walk that border. You know, very similar to our good friends, the Hooch, you know, where, you know, you have that flair. How do you sneak in the theme? You know, how do you sneak in the medicine with the spoonful of sugar?
Totally.
How do you do that?
I'll start off and then I know Gabi can follow up with her rapping component, because to be clear, we are cross genre. We are not limited to one genre or another, and our influences span across the globe. So we have a lot of different people to pay homage to, and, you know, that we respect deeply as musicians and as people. And a lot of them do come from Connecticut. So, you know, we have a great scene here, and I'm glad that people are actually taking note of it now and discussing it. But in terms of the writing aspect, I tend to be more metaphorical in my writing style. I do, in a not so subtle way, like to discuss topics that maybe are marginalized. We actually have one song we wrote, 2 or 3 years ago, that deals with the idea of, okay, the devil is a character who, you know, gets all these negative attributes, right? He's the one you don't want to see, you don't want to be there. Hell's a horrible place. I can say hell, right?
Oh yeah, hell's fine.
Okay, cool. I wasn't sure how far into the double hockey sticks land I need to go. Yes. I am a teacher too, so I do teach music. No. I have to tame myself down quite a bit. But I was going to say, you know, it's the idea of how much of what we believe of the devil and hell is our own fears and our own projections. And it's a metaphor for how we treat others, right? So we can have somebody who has all these negative aspects pegged to them, but are they really responsible? Or is that just the fall person? So that's really what that particular song deals with. And hopefully we'll be recording soon. We've been toying around the idea of, you know, doing some recording, and we're looking at studios now. But, you know, that's my piece from it. And Gabi, I know, speaks more to her own real life events experience.
Yeah, I do. It's a release, and it allows me to express myself. I come from a place, I have a spoken word background. Actually, I took part in a group on campus when I was in college, and it allowed me to, it was Performing for Change, and they allowed me to grow in that. And then I got back to it, and I'm like, well, this like lyrics, it could be like lyrics fine. And I just applied it to my music because I play guitar too. And I, you know, I'm like, well, I'm not Whitney vocally. So
I'm not a rapper either, so it's totally cool.
I always liked rapping. Yin and yang. I always liked rapping too. So I'm like, why don't I just like rap and play guitar and just write my lyrics and we put it in there, and you know,
it's really cool. What was it in 2021 towards the beginning, middle, Gabi actually wrote a rap that spoke to a direct experience of a coworker of hers.
Yeah.
If you want to speak about that a little bit, I think the listeners might be curious.
Yeah, it was something that it was a really, really horrible. And her son actually was murdered. And
in
Bridgeport, yes. And it was a close friend of mine. I don't know how far in I could get into it, but the anniversary is coming up, and you can see how it is long term and it's permanent, the hurt that goes on in this community. And you had said something earlier about together, so we have to see each other as human beings. And you can't, I don't know, for me personally, I couldn't kill another person. So, and seeing the aftermath of that, it's hard. It's hard. And
it really does affect the entire community.
Yeah.
I mean, the way people come together for the vigils, they try and help console each other. And the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, especially in the inner cities, they're not isolated incidents. No. You have other people who are other victims' families, who then come and try and console the new victims' families. And it's a horrible chain reaction
it's like a cycle almost.
Right. That, we see, and that's not a unique to Connecticut. That's US wide. I mean, it's a very unfortunate thing. And, I think that a lot of times those sorts of crimes happen because people are in pain, and rather than help they need, they lash out. So how do we then incorporate music not only as a way to heal, but as a way to prevent? Yeah. So much focus was put on, like, for instance, Marilyn Manson, who I'm not even going to speak to that because he's a horrible human being. However, a lot of focus was put on him during the Columbine shootings and, later school shootings. And, well, he's to blame for this. He's the one that incites this. Is that really fair to say? And instead of finding a blame, like I said before, find a solution. Find a positive way to reach people. Because what does that say about us as a society? If that's really the truth, and people really are adversely affected by negative music, negative video games, a lot of what I listen to is negative music, right? Like, my background is in negative music, minor sounds, things that are angsty and angry. Do I go out hurting people? Absolutely not. So where's that disconnect? And how do we create a scenario where music isn't the influencer, it's more of the release, right? Like, it's okay to be angry. People can listen to music when they're angry and feel a little bit better afterwards.
Yeah.
Conversely, people can be happy, listen to a sad song, and maybe feel a little sad. TV has that same aspect, So how do we fuse the arts with the mental health is really the larger question in my mind.
No, you make incredible points, and first and foremost, Gabi, I'm really, really sorry and condolence.
Yeah.
Thank you for the bravery of sharing. Thank you for engaging in that and sharing that with us. That's awesome. And
I just beat her up.
I just wanted to say that before anything else, and just take a moment and let us breathe in that moment for a second. And then on top of the knowledge that was just dropped, people really, really don't understand. And again, Marilyn Manson, not a great person, absolutely horrible, has done some horribly terrible things, and has been doing it for a very, very, very long time.
Not Gabi Whitney approved, just to be clear.
Right. But was also used as a scapegoat, was also used as that thing. And you can see that happen with music throughout time. There are always people that are pushing the artistic envelope and different things like that. But, you could still go see Jim Thorpe, artwork. And go ahead, Google that, folks. Google that, and we'll get back to that at another point in time. And no one said that was making anyone hyper violent. You could go and the Die Hard movies were making a ton of money, but no one was stating that there was hyper violence because of the Die Hard movies. But there needed to be parental advisory stickers on CDs and albums, because it made some suburban people of palm coloredness and high money value uncomfortable. And they didn't want, and as much as everyone else lives in their uncomfortability, when you make a certain section of life a little bit uncomfortable, then your whole world has to change. And that is a big flaw. We've talked about, I've been on a walkabout to try to find, the point of original hurt, because you can find understanding with anyone. if you sit and get to know that person well enough where you can find out the point of original hurt. I had somebody staying with me for a weekend for a convention who was a staunch conservative from Canada, a big Islamophobe. And I walk around with a hat that in Arabic says Inshallah, because I served with Muslim soldiers and they stood up for a country that didn't even support them. So of course I'm going to show love to rock and roll. So we would sit up for hours upon hours and have arguments and have discussions until he told me he's a math teacher and he actually taught math in Afghanistan. And the Taliban came through and bombed his school and he had to hide under a desk.
Oh my God.
And as his phone battery died for 4 hours until he was able to be saved. His point of original hurt was that moment. And that made him terrified. And that is what made him lash out in Islamophobia.
Right.
Okay. And that's a very real statement and a real story. But that is the journey that I've tried to be on with people, is to try to understand that. Because if we can understand that.
You're on a new journey on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. Myself, Preston, a.k.a. Prestige, and my partner in crime, Long Island Rays, Elm City Made, EZ BlueZ is in the building. We got Gabi and Whitney with us on Behind the Brand. I'm really excited to have these two ladies with us, these amazing musicians. Who is good cop and who is bad cop?
Ooh.
There you go.
I think we all know the answer to that.
We do. I don't know. Please tell me.
All right. So I would say if we're playing that, when it comes to the business element, that's definitely me. I'm definitely bad cop.
Okay.
You know, I have to say, like, you know, we really have it already, but we've definitely had our own challenges as female musicians, especially as a female duo. With, you know, just recently we have a third member who's joined us who is male, and he's great, and he's been around for 100 years. Shout out to our bassist, Dan Lynch.
Yeah.
He's the man and a half. And, you know, but before we added him to the group there, and even still, there's a little bit of pervasive element of chauvinism, as well as some serious genderism that comes to play. One large example I have of it is after shows, after seeing just the two of us play, people would automatically assume we were lesbians. We support the LGBT community all the time. You know, we're actively doing different events for Life in My Days. Shout out to Jamar Jabari, fighting the good fight. But they're an organization dedicated to bringing awareness to and helping LGBTQ plus members of the community with different aspects of being LGBTQ plus, you know, access to resources and financial resources and all sorts of things. So they're a great organization, but, you know, we support the gay community and we are not shy about it in the least. We will sing and perform songs from gay artists and we are totally okay with that. And there's no reason why someone should not be okay with that.
Right.
But as a result of it, people automatically have this understanding that we must be lesbians, right? We have to be, because here we are promoting the LGBTQ plus community. You know, as a background, I was going through ally training in college, so I'm actually an ally for the LGBTQ plus community.
Okay.
And it's not because I'm a member of the community. I'm a member as an extension. I am an ally. I'm not a direct member of the community. And frankly, it's none of anybody's business what my business is, but it's interesting that that has been the stigma forward. And when that's not the stigma, the automatic follow-up is, oh, you're a groupie, right? Gabi automatically, right when we started, people assumed she was the band groupie.
Yeah.
Because she's a girl holding a guitar. She's clearly not playing it, right? She's got to be carrying it for somebody. Right?
Yeah, I know, right?
And how detrimental was that for you? I mean,
it sucks. I still like, I have to fight that every time I go on stage.
Oh my God.
And you never know. And, you know, to be quite honest with you, at the end of the day, my core is not groupie. She knows it. Y'all know it. It's just a select few who don't know me. And once I think they get to know me, you know, whether they choose to or not, at the end of the day, I am who I am, and I have to fight that all the time, and it hurts. But I know my truth. And that's something that you have to keep going with, is knowing who you are.
And at the end of the day, too, especially in the arts community, the understanding is you have to earn respect. You don't just get it off the bat.
Right.
Just by having shows, just by putting it together, just by showing up, that is not enough to garner respect. You have to keep showing up.
Yes.
You have to keep proving that you know what you're doing. And unfortunately for females and, you know, members of the LGBTQ plus community, one member, Paula, based in New Haven, amazing artist. We played with her before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a lot of, we have to do extra proving. We have to work harder than others.
Right.
And a lot of times it's because we don't fit the stereotypical mold, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for me as a female singer, that's not as unusual.
Mm-hmm.
Female rock singer, okay, that's a little bit more niche. But then, you know, having female guitar, automatically it's okay. What do we have? Heart. Right?
And there are
Like,
great
what else?
bands, but yeah.
But, you know, there's not a lot of examples that exist that people are aware of as house names. So we have to sort of carve that out and actively change people's minds about who we are and what we do in order to not only get the respect, but get them to be fans, right? Like they have to believe in what we're doing. Because you can respect somebody, not necessarily like, you know, the music and the direction.
Right.
But to actually want to show up to what you're doing, you have to do a little bit more than that. And, you know, that's a struggle that, again, as female artists and, you know, LGBTQ plus artists and, you know, people who are biracial, multiracial, you know, just minority in general, that is always a struggle. And, you know, we have a little joke because Gabi's half Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
And our bassist is Puerto Rican. So together we have one full Puerto Rican in the band and one Jew.
There you go. No,
in case you couldn't tell.
It's so interesting that you brought up Heart, because the minute you started telling the story, I mean, this is how far back it really goes. You know, I remember reading all of the stuff, you know, about, and you can actually go through the record company at one point really just kept spinning that, even though, you know, Anne and Nancy were sisters, biological sisters, there were still like people that were running with the fact that they were also lovers, or keeping it ambiguous enough to keep people entertained because they didn't think the music was good enough. Now, honestly, everyone listening right now, put on a Heart song and tell me that music isn't good enough to stand on its own. Tell me Barracuda is not one of the best songs that's ever been written.
I was listening to these dreams today.
Yeah, it's amazing.
There you go. And for those who really want to take it even further, the movie, now I can't remember the name of the movie, with the band Stillwater, Nancy Wilson wrote all of the music for Stillwater. For the band itself, Fever Dog was written by Nancy Wilson, you know, and so all of that. And then you can also look at Lita Ford, you know, the Runaways, all phenomenal, all female.
Yeah.
You know, but then Lita Ford in the 90s, you know, in the 80s to the 90s is crawling around licking ice cubes. Meanwhile, she could shred the guitar as good, if not better, than most of the, you know, the people that were out there in the mainstream. You know, we spoke with Rock Mommy about this, you know, when she was on, she was telling us, you know, to prepare for a show, she's got to pick the outfit, she makes sure the nails are done and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah.
We do that too.
Well, and to give people the understanding, I make sure my shirt is clean. That's what I do. That's how I prepare for a show. You know, I run my outfit by Tristan to make sure that I'm not too insane.
Or that you guys aren't wearing the same thing because, you know,
well,
who knows?
See, we don't even care about that, to be honest with you. We're like, whatever. We're going to do what we got to do. You know, that's the difference. That's a huge difference. And that's a lot of what is wrong. And yes, as artists, we 100%, we are only as good as our last performance. And that's why, you know, we spend hours upon hours in rehearsal going over we have a 90-minute set. We know every minute of that 90 how it's going to play out. You know, and we've literally practiced so much that, you know, we can make drunken banter from the crowd. Like, we heckle ourselves in practice just so we don't miss a beat if we get heckled, on stage. So it's there. And that's for someone who has to just make sure his shirt is clean, kinda, to play a show. Now, on top of all that extra work, imagine having to make sure your look is on point, your clothing is on point. You're not too suggestive, but you're suggestive enough to keep them visually entertained. All of these different things
I'm a
you have
little
to play
bit more
into.
on the suggestive end of the spectrum, I'd say. I've shown up, I have a lot of Wendy O. Williams sort of style sensibility. So I consider the venue, of course, but
Yeah, of course.
when I'm not doing a family-oriented event and I'm at a bar, I definitely straddle the line quite a bit. So I try to keep it fun, but
Yeah, well, that's art though, and honestly, if we're not pushing those limits as artists, then we should stop. Or we should just go about and continue to play the same exact note over and over and over again. We need to continue to push ourselves and push those boundaries. Because you should make people uncomfortable, and I appreciate you guys.
It's sort of also kind of taking the power back, right? For so long, women who were raped, sexually abused, the police and the press would spin it in a way, oh, well, you were wearing this, so you clearly deserved this. Whereas if something, happens from man to man, right, it would be, oh my God, how could he have done that to you? What a horror. So it definitely highlighted that sort of duality of, well, if you're a girl, we have to check what you're wearing first to make sure that you weren't asking for it, right? So in a way, for me as a person, it sort of takes the power back a little bit. Yes, I decided to wear this today, but no, that does not mean you can touch me.
Exactly.
And, I can say it's very more uncommon than common that a woman hasn't been sexually harassed, sexually assaulted in some way, shape, or form at some point in their lives. I mean, even something as simple as years ago, I was at bar in New Haven, and this is back when they would have the club in the back and you need the pizza on the front. And I was just following my friends to the back, and a guy went under my dress and grabbed my butt, and I punched him in the face. As soon as I figured out which guy it was, he was out.
So, there you go.
But it's like, but why should anyone, like female, gay, male, transgender, why should any of us have to live thinking, well, if I wear this, what reaction will I get? Will somebody hurt me? Will somebody touch me the wrong way? And that's absolutely not acceptable. As a society, that is our bad for creating that sort of prevailing ideology, that is something that is to be expected. If you do X, you get Y. It's just clothes, people. It's just a self-expression. That's all it is.
Well, you make an incredible point, and it actually kind of piggybacks on the point with the music itself. It seems as a society we push further and further away from taking societal accountability. It's always going to be someone else's fault. It's always going to be because of this. It's not because it's not because the city is hurting and people are doing what they need to do to survive that there's a high murder rate. It's because people are listening to angry music, or they keep popping that 2 Live Crew, and it's not true. Like that is just not true. There are those those original hurt points, and I think once we can understand and once we can really, really accept that accountability, that's when the real healing is going to start. I mean, it's something that I think we all should do is to look inward and be like, yeah, you want to know something? Today, I wasn't that great of a human being. I need to be a little bit better of a human being tomorrow. And it's not per any other standard than your own individual standard. Right. There is not a simple puzzle piece that's going to make it all fit together, because everyone has their own personal point of growth. Yes, societal norms are there to try to make it a little bit easier, but it also has a tendency to beat us down. And it really can stifle us. And to the point where when you do have those points of freedom, yeah, you're going to get a little bit wild. I remember the first weekend after basic training being able to start to drink.
By
You
the
know,
way,
after
thank you for your service.
Yes,
like
thank you.
seriously, we love our veterans too.
Yes.
I appreciate that. I'm going to take that, and I'm going to honor that. But I'm also going to give it to my brothers and sisters that are still serving.
Absolutely.
I happen to be home with family that I love. They are not, so I'm going to give that love to them. But I do really appreciate that. Thank you so much. But that's the point. Is, you know, when you have, you know, when you're completely constricted and you have that moment of freedom, you can lose it. You can lose, and it can go wild. But then you wind up getting labeled as that. And I do feel that a lot of the marginalized communities have been pushed to those points where they then had to, you know, then the negative happens and then they get stuck with that label. And that's so unfair because it's a moment of weakness, because it was, you know, it was something that you needed to do to survive. You know, no matter what, I don't care. If you're hungry, you're going to do what's necessary to go out and make sure you eat, because death is not an option. You know, but that's me on my soapbox. Let's talk a little bit more about you guys.
All good.
All good.
So I think we kind of deviated from good cop, bad cop a little bit. That was my bad, you know. I just kind of went in that direction. But yeah, definitely good cop Gabi, if Gabi wants to speak about that.
It's hard. It's always hard to tell because I feel like we're both a good cop in a sense. I feel like I get pegged as the nice and sweet one, and Whitney's like, I mean business, and she's really
I'm aggressive.
No, and that's one of the things that I think makes us so good. And I've explained this to her before. You know, we don't have the same exact energy we do agree with, and things that we are very much alike on, but we are more complementary. Like, she's alpha, I'm beta. It's like a puzzle piece that goes together and fits so well. Like, I have my strength, she has hers, and you know, it's not a clash. It's a beautiful combination.
It's a coming together.
Yes.
Definitely. And it's great too, because, you know, a lot of times people talk about, for bands, you know, the sort of camaraderie you get after touring together, after doing shows together, after spending so much time together, right? Between the doing the shows, the traveling to the shows, the practicing that you do together, you really do develop a relationship that in a lot of ways is actually stronger than sibling relationships at times, right? Yeah, and I think that's why there can be so many points of contention too, because you're around them so much and you believe so much in what you're doing. See, that's another thing that, you know, we're constantly at odds with. When you look at us on paper, you know, look at our resumes and everything, it's like, oh, well, why didn't you do more? Are you kidding me? There's not enough time in the day to do more.
I know.
And, you know, people look at it as a hobby, right? For us, music really isn't a hobby.
It's a passion and a life purpose.
Yeah, it's literally like the job supports the music. You know what I mean?
Much.
But it's not what's keeping us going. The music keeps us going. Yeah, we're feeding ourselves. And, you know, is it really hard to make a career off of music? Absolutely. I mean, there's so many factors that come into play. Your network, your timing, whether, you know, your music is going to be really wanted and understood on a larger national level, right? Like if we hyper localize it, yeah, you might do pretty well. But when you're taking it to a national audience, it can be a much harder sell. So it really isn't so much about, you know, let's get famous and jobs tomorrow. Although anyone listening who wants to do that for us, I'm not entirely opposed. But, you know, it's more so getting the respect for musicians as people. You know, there's an old joke about like, you know, somebody's in a bad circumstance, someone says, oh, don't worry about it, it's just a musician. Like, we're less than people. We're subpar people. And, you know, when you look at history, it's like, you know, this is so far of a deviation from what it was originally. Back in the beginning, musicians were revered. We were considered to be the teachers, the leaders, the ones who directed everybody else. It was commonplace that you would leave your home if you, you know, had enough talent or your family deemed you to, that you would go and you would be basically an apprentice and deal with these, you know, famous composers and performers. And they would have multiple apprentices at once that you would live, eat, sleep, and breathe with for years on end. And, you know, thinking just about a classic example that I think most people know about, right? Like, they've all seen the movie Titanic. Pretty classic. And what does the band do at the end? they keep playing until the ship sinks.
Mm-hmm.
And when one of them, panicked a little bit, they said, don't look stressed out, just keep playing. Our goal is to keep everybody else happy and joyous.
Mm-hmm.
And that really speaks to the core of what it is that we do. We're here for ourselves, but we're more here for everybody else, making sure that stories are told, people are understood, feelings are felt instead of suppressed.
And validated.
And validated, right? Because a lot of times in regular life, you don't get, right? That's why people have the distinction between coworkers and what do they call it? Like a work husband or a work wife, right? That's why those distinctions happen, because it's almost like the opposite for me personally. And I think Gabi would say the same, where I'm my most self when I'm not working.
Yeah.
When I'm anywhere but work, I am allowed to be who I am. I don't have to temper down my appearance to, satiate those around me so they're not uncomfortable.
That's
right?
exactly how
somehow
myself and Easy feel on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven, myself, Prestige, and my partner in crime, Long Island Rays, Elm City made, EZ BlueZ is in the building. Gabi and Whitney are behind the brand with us on WNHH. Whitney, I didn't mean to lose your train of thought. Go right ahead with your answer.
No, that was so smooth.
Yeah,
That,
it was amazing.
Major props to that.
Thank
Just
you so
jumped
much.
right in, laid it down. But, it's, again, this interesting sort of society that we live in. And I think it's, again, not unique. I think many societies have this sort of issue where who you are is more or less stripped down once you're in the realm of your workplace.
Yeah.
And it's how much myself can I show without being too much of myself, right? And that's really, again, where music comes into play. It's not only an art form, but it's a much needed self-expression. And I think that's why music is such a popular area to get into, either as a hobbyist or as a career, because people really need that outlet because they're not getting it elsewhere.
Yeah, no, that actually covers everything. It's amazing.
Yay!
What
I sound smart. Cool.
no, you said no. Beyond that, it's so amazing to hear, because I say similar things, and it's refreshing to hear that coming from somebody else. So thank you for also validating my feelings. I appreciate that.
Consider yourself validated.
Like awesome. It is that Prestige and I have been sat down with people and had the conversation of we thrive as a society through history when arts are leading the way. When we invest in arts, that's when we had our golden eras. That's when things started to thrive again. And I feel, especially now with the invention of the internet and how easy it is to, again, very difficult, and you still like another extra full-time job to fully be on social media and promote your stuff correctly. So when I say it's easy, I mean it's easier than going through a record label to do it. That's all I meant by easy. It's still a lot of hard work. So this is not a Dire Straits song.
Easy himself,
right.
Talking about how easy.
Thank you. But that's really what it comes down to is, you can really, get out more. I say it all the time. I don't think personally, and it's an opinion, I don't think if YouTube was out in the early 90s when grunge exploded, I do feel more people would be paying attention to Mother Love Bone than they would Nirvana. But because, when you are the
Great
people
band,
that kind of start the sound, thank you. But there's someone that kind of starts the sound. They were a sound that was different. And then other bands were able to come through there and go off of that. You guys are also different. You guys have a sound that's different. You are blending acoustic, you're blending, hip hop, you're blending soul, you're blending rock, you're blending punk, and you're coming up with a unique sound. Do you feel that has opened up more doors for you, or that has made your journey harder?
Do you have any thoughts on that, Gab?
Well, I mean, part of the reason why we do this too, and when we talk about it, when Whitney says we're here for others, we want to reach out and, with our true interests in all different types of musical genres, all different types of eras. It helps us to connect to different audiences.
Mm-hmm.
And so it allows us to play at all different kinds of venues, I believe. Wouldn't you say so, Whitney?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's never easy being the pioneer, right? And I'm not saying there aren't other people out there doing it, but there's very few that I can think of that do anything similar. Again, big ups to the Hooch. We saw them last night. We love those guys.
They're awesome.
Big ups to them. But, you know, they're literally the only act I can think of in the state that I'm aware of that does anything remotely similar. And it's interesting too, as we were watching them, I looked at Gabi, I was like, is this a little weird? Because, you know, Jamar's up there, he's rapping, he's playing guitar. Yeah. And then you've got Mike, who's on his cajon, and I play djembe on occasion. So I'm like, literally replace us with them. And there you go. Yeah. But, you know, it's interesting. But in a lot of ways, it is a bit of a harder sell to venues. A lot of venues are very standard in what their market wants and what they want. And it's sometimes hard to separate out what the audience wants from what the owner wants, right? Like a lot of venues out there just want to hear music they like. It might not be what the audience likes, but how do you reconcile the two if they're very different? Yeah. We've been fortunate in the fact that most places that we've worked with are very open to different types of sounds, but there have been a number of places I've tried to get our foot in the door who don't really understand it. Just from reading our bio, they're like, okay, so what does it sound like? Well, it's a blend of this and this. Okay, but what is that? So it's a little bit of a head scratcher for them if they don't have that sort of that openness and, you know, their finger on the pulse of what's going on with music. I actually had this conversation last night with another member of the band, Joe from Scream and Shout. Shouts to him. Saw him last night supporting other acts. And I was mentioning to him that my age group was really the first time that people started listening to different genres simultaneously. Instead of going through a rap phase or a rock phase, we started listening to everything at once. Well, why is that? Invention of the iPod. We were able to hand select what songs we liked from what artists without having to commit to an old album. A whole album, rather. Old album. Jesus, I'm dating myself. But a whole album, which is in stark contrast to what people did in the 80s and 90s, right? They would listen to the whole album. You have the people who are really into the 80s and just want to hear the songs from that album or, you know, the preceding albums of that particular artist. And that's just what they want. And you try and throw something in there that they're not expecting and they are not here for it. Yeah. But with my age group, because we sort of changed the way that music is gourmandized into a sort of a la carte system, our audiences are stoked when we do, you know, a song from Alanis Morissette and then, you know, we throw in Beastie Boys. People are like, whoa, how can you jump from Whitney Houston to this? And it's like, we just do that. It's natural for us because rather than be focused on the labels, which I think so many people are, right? They love labeling each other and themselves as a means of understanding that it's more of a detriment than an asset. So
no, it definitely is. One thing though, unfortunately, we are starting to run a little bit long in time, and we are getting that whole. We're getting that whole. What is that? That hook from
Apollo curtain.
The Apollo hook. The Apollo curtain's coming through, right? So right now, we want to give this last moment 100% to you guys. Can you tell the people how they can get in touch with you, how they can, you know, figure out what your guys' schedule is so they can go and support you guys and see your amazing, amazing musical acts, anything that is happening after the 28th of February, please knock it out of the park.
Sure. Yeah. So we can be found on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We go by Gabi and Whitney, and that's spelled Gabi. And Whitney, and we usually use a plus sign. We are going to be next at Talcott Mountain Collective on March 11th. It's a cool spot if you haven't been there yet. It's owned by the same person that owns City Steam Brewery, so really cool spot up in Simsbury. We have a couple dates coming up at Main Street Tavern, Garlic Festival at Notre Dame, and we're pretty much all over. We're going from Fairfield County all the way up to West Haven, or West Hartford. West Hartford. My
Yeah.
West Hartford.
Yes.
Yes.
I tell Whitney, I'm like, we're gonna go on tour.
Well, we basically do. Every show's a tour, right?
I love it.
Exactly.
You never know who
Exactly.
your audience is gonna be. It's a new audience every time. You think about it.
Absolutely. But thank you guys so much for having
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you for giving a voice to female musicians and female-centric bands.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for
Sure.
doing your work.
Well, we really appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story. We cannot wait. You know, tell us when the recording starts. If you need some extra suggestions on where to go. I'm not saying Vic's amazing, but Vic's amazing. So you
keep hearing to go to him.
Huh? Yeah, I'm just saying I can facilitate that meeting. We're friends like that. I'd be like, hey Vic, we're gonna stop by. It'll be a 1-2 thing. You know, it'll be fine. Uncle Vic is amazing. I love him to death. But on top of all that, thank you for everything you do. When you have music to release, we want to make sure that we play it for you. We want to release it for you. And we look forward to the next chapter of the Gabi and Whitney experience. So thank you so much.
Thank you all so much.
you.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. This has been Behind the Brand.
Wondering what to write about, trying to figure out what it's all about. Existentialist, am I worth anything or just discount? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Spending time all alone, sending my songs through the phone, dreaming of a better home, while focused on trying to hone this craft, witchcraft. I hope the brujas let this last.
I don't know if the earth is painted blue. I don't know if that's really you. I wanna go outside. I wanna go outside.
So many folks I've had to ghost. Negative ones the most. The seconds wasted. Never returned. I'm spaceship dreaming of landing home. I'm not alone.
Even though we all die.